Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, Mr. Roth, you've stated already that what happened with the New York Post story was similar to the hack and leak scenarios from 2016. You also said that you actually were opposed to deleting the New York Post story. Who advocated for the removal of the New York Post story?
The company's decision to treat it as a violation.
Mr. Roth, who at the company actually went over your recommendation? Because you're pretty high up. Who overrode you?
The decision was communicated to me by my direct supervisor.
Who is that person?
Her name was Del Harvey. She was
Okay.
the vice president of trust and safety at the time.
All right, thank you so much. Ms. Gaddy, real quick, you said to the chairman earlier, and I want to paraphrase what I heard earlier, is that Twitter had no contact with anybody from the Biden team. Is that correct to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Put that up for me. Okay, over my right shoulder, we have an email. Reference, this is Saturday, October 24th, 5:39 p.m., referencing 5 different tweets. This is with a Twitter email chain. Under the line, it's more to review from the Biden team. Does anybody have a comment on how much interaction was happening with the Biden team at Twitter with respect to tweets that they wanted Twitter to review? Ms. Gaddy, Mr. Roth?
I'm not familiar with this email.
So you're not familiar with this email, Mr. Roth? Are you familiar with this email?
Only from what's been reported in the Twitter files.
Did you ever have contact with anybody from the Biden team?
No, sir, I did not. We explicitly separated the teams that would interact with campaigns from teams like mine that were responsible for content moderation.
How big was the organization in Twitter that was actually working with campaigns?
I couldn't say for sure.
Did you ever have any contact with the DNC?
Directly? No, I did not.
Did anybody at Twitter have any contact with anybody at the DNC?
I think it's likely that somebody at Twitter did, yes.
In these emails, it's listed that these are tweets that need to be flagged from the Biden team. That's what's in the files. You have no idea how many people actually engage with the Twitter team or how frequently that engagement happened.
No, and again, that was by design. We kept those functions separate from content moderation so that we could impartially assess reports like this.
Do you know how many tweets were actually flagged and taken down at the behest of the Biden team?
I wouldn't agree with the characterization of it as being at the behest of them. These tweets were reported, and Twitter independently evaluated them under its rules.
But the email is very clear. More to review from Biden team. The response 3 hours later at the bottom, hold this up real quick so we can see. The request at the bottom, it says, handled these. What does handled these mean?
My understanding is that these tweets contained non-consensual nude photos of Hunter Biden, and they were removed by the company under—
Hold on, real quick, Mr. Roth. How could you know so much about the content of these tweets? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, these are just web addresses. I don't know what's in these tweets. You have these things committed to memory that you know the content, but you don't know who you talk to at the Biden team?
Sir, I didn't meet with the Biden team, but there was extensive public reporting about these tweets specifically that uncovered what they were.
You know the contents of the tweets. It was obviously at Twitter, but you have no idea how often people who worked in your organization had with the Biden team during the end of the 2020 presidential elections.
I would emphasize that the people who interfaced with the campaigns were not part of my team or organization. I would know what the interactions were if they were on my team. It was a different part of the organization, not mine.
Let me ask you a separate question, and I'll ask it of you too, Mr. Baker. Have you guys been able to quantify the amount of in-kind contributions associated with taking down the New York Post story? Because the New York Post story was down for 2 weeks, give or take. Do you have any understanding of how much that story was limited by Twitter and also by other social media companies? What the impact of an in-kind contribution that would be to the Joe Biden presidential election in 2020?
I don't know the answer to that question, sir.
Do you think it's big?
I don't know the answer.
Do you think it's more than a maximum contribution to a campaign?
I wouldn't want to speculate.
Would you call it 25,000?
I don't know the answer to that question.
100,000?
Sir, I don't know the answer to the
A
question.
million?
I don't know the answer to the question.
Do you think Twitter will be in violation of federal election laws with the size of an in-kind contribution to take down a story, which is true, by the way? because you guys thought you knew something with limited information?
I'm not going to speculate on that sitting here today, sir. I try to propound a legal analysis of election laws.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. If she's here. It's your turn. You want to go? Okay. We won't start the clock till you get there. Gentleman yields back. I'll recognize myself now for questioning. The Biden family investigation begins with the story of how big tech, the media, former intelligence agents, and the Bidens themselves suppressed the story of Hunter Biden's laptop weeks before the 2020 election. Today, we're hearing from Twitter executives who buried the New York Post laptop story, claiming it violated the platform's hacked materials policy. In reality, the Twitter executives were hostile towards conservatives and biased towards anyone who opposed their points of view. For example, Mr. Roth, did you write this tweet?
I regret the language that I used in some of my former tweets, but yes, I did post that.
And I'll read the tweet so it's in the record. Yes, that person in the pink hat is clearly a bigger threat to your brand of feminism than actual Nazis in the White House. Mr. Roth, do you think all conservatives are Nazis?
Certainly not, sir.
What about the hundreds of people who worked in the Trump administration?
Certainly not.
Did Ms. Gaddy or any other lawyer at Twitter ever tell you to take down that tweet?
No, Twitter did not have a practice of restricting employees sharing their personal viewpoints on the service.
Okay. Turning back to the laptop, Ms. Gaddy, are you aware that Hunter Biden's lawyers, as recently as last week, wrote the Department of Justice about Hunter Biden's laptop?
I've seen some articles about that.
Yes, they did. And it appears that Hunter Biden's attorney is admitting that the laptop and emails on it are authentic. So, Ms. Gaddy, on October 14, 2020, did Hunter Biden report to Twitter that he was the victim of a hack?
No, I don't believe he did.
Ms. Gaddy, when the New York Post initially broke the story about the laptop, did you call Hunter Biden's lawyer to ask if it was authentic?
No, I did not.
Isn't it correct that the Biden campaign had contact with Twitter in the run-up to the 2020 election?
Not to my knowledge.
And you're telling this committee that you didn't ask any Biden representative if the laptop was real or for Hunter Biden's attorney's phone number to confirm its authenticity?
We did not speak to anybody related to that.
Mr. Baker, are you aware that the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since December of 2019?
I'm sorry, am I aware of that now?
Well, were you aware then?
Then, no. I don't believe, sir, that to the best of my recollection, I don't think I knew
But
that.
you're aware now?
I've heard that now, yes.
Mr. Baker, did you call any of your contacts at the FBI to ask whether or not they knew if the material had been hacked?
I don't recall contacting them about that on that day.
Mr. Roth, Ms. Gaddy, and Mr. Baker, it appears to me that you failed at your jobs. You were entrusted with the highest level of power at Twitter, but when you were faced with the New York Post story, instead of allowing people to judge the information for themselves, you rushed to find a reason why the American people shouldn't see it. In a matter of hours, you were deciding on the truth of a story that spans years and dozens of complex international transactions. You did this because you were terrified of Joe Biden not winning the election in 2020. That's what it appeared. I can assure you this committee will succeed in holding the Bidens accountable. So much of the evidence of wrongdoing from this family is located in that hard drive that you all led the American people to believe was Russian disinformation, when in fact it was not. Now, I agree with Mr. Baker's opening statement. The concern for me is the level of involvement the FBI had with not just Twitter, but all of our social media platform companies. And I think it kind of goes in the opposite direction of where my friend, the ranking member, was trying to take this in his opening statement. This is something this committee should be concerned about. The government doesn't have any role in suppressing speech. And that's something the media should be very concerned about. What if there's a conservative president that somehow cleans out our FBI and they put in conservatives to suppress liberal speech? We don't, that's something that should never happen. So I look forward to more questions, and at this time, I yield to the gentleman from
I think
Ohio.